Hey YouTube, and welcome to episode number 3 of my Super Wonderland tutorial series. In the last episode we talked about node graphs, and in this episode we will be looking at how to actually build your stage, how to design the scenery, and overall how to make it look pretty. So most of the scenery starts with the terrain tab, and now we are greeted with two new options on the left side. First is the brush, and the second is the environment configuration. And what the brush lets you do is block out simple scenery pretty damn fast. Every stage on a default import uses the Area 1 brush. And now there's a couple of things we can do when we select it. We can just press on the area we want to paint on, and then we could just paint our basic scenery on top of that. Down here there's all the options you can do with the brush. Create just places one on top, delete deletes again, and leveling out just goes down to the lowest layer. There's a couple of extra tools down here where you can do some slanted steps, which always ends up in stairs or rounded stairs. You can create a pool of water wherever you have painted your terrain, and you have a dirt option over here. So then there's a couple of extra modes you can use. Raise a layer just makes everything bigger, and lower the layer does the opposite again. And then you have the tool where you can just select a big area and then lower or raise whatever you selected. For a 2D game, we do not need all the extra area over here, so we can just delete that. Let's go into the editor. We can either go and delete one by one, but that would take too long. Therefore, we go into this mode, select and lower, and do the same again. Also, one thing I noticed last time, we learned about preset status for the chest to open it and close it, but we never really set it for the coin. And what we can do with the coin is we can just make it spin. And it might look a little bit nicer when you have an object that is animated. So back to the terrain editor and to the environment configuration. So in order to make these effective, you have to make sure that a player is actually selected for this. And now what you can do is you can choose different background settings, depending on what kind of style you want to go. You could add filter, or even change the sky color, the sky background color, which is all the way over there. Also important, if you want to enable like a day and night cycle, then you have to make sure the environment configuration is set to all players, otherwise it will not work. And what you can do is go to your stage settings, and down here you have the stage initial time point, which is now at 10, and a time elapsed per second. This now becomes active because we set this setting over here. So for example, if we wanted to make a stage that plays at night, we can now go and set the initial time at midnight and make sure no time elapses while we play. And now if we go to test play and test our stage, then we can see it as nighttime. So one more thing before we start actually building. To achieve the 2D look, we have to change our camera. So what we can do is go over here into the manage main camera settings. And now we have a bunch of different options we can choose from. I would say the current camera options are quite limited as we can only follow the character. And if we now actually want to change what type of camera we have, then we need to go to the mode, and then we can switch between classic, a 3D over the shoulder type of camera, a 2.5D, first person, and a third person. The only difference between the classic camera and the third person camera is that you can configure the third person camera, and the classic camera just gives you all the default options you would expect to have when you have the normal camera in Genshin Impact. So, but for a 2.5D game, we choose that camera, and then we have to set it up in a way that makes sense for a game. So now there's a lot of different sliders, and we'll go through each of them so you can actually see what they do. The camera field of view detection just shows you how far the camera is like away from your character, and you can always see the camera preview on the top left corner. Let's keep it at 45 for now. For a 2.5D, we will need to enable this. So with the offset, you could place it a little bit further down or up from the character, or a little bit to the side. We don't really need that, but you can design it that way. I do not want to follow rotation because I always want to see it from a specific side. There's a default line of sight slider, and as you can see down here, it says line of sight range. And what this means is when you scroll with the mouse wheel, you can move closer or further away. But technically speaking, in the 2.5D game, or at least in my game, I did not need it. So for now, I'll just keep it at 15 on both sides. And then you can see the default line of sight range stays at 15. And now for the horizontal angle, since we removed everything like down here, we should move the camera to this side. For that, we just have to turn it to 90 degrees. And I will want to move the camera a little bit down. And now it's a little bit far away maybe. So what we just go a little bit closer, 33 maybe. Let's move the gate a little bit to the side. And you can play with the camera like however you want. You do not have to do a 2.5D game. This is just a reference I'm giving you. For now, let's just test the actual configured camera and how it looks in the game. Now that this is done, we can finally start building. What I would recommend is starting from big to small, so you do not get lost in detail. So what I like to do is start with rocks. So I'll just put out all the big rocks for now, so we can duplicate and move them around. And just keep the ones that have like a similar color scheme. So I will not use any of these over here, because they are too different. Next big thing to the rocks would be trees. So we can just go in the trees and then look for trees we like. And I was thinking about just doing a red-orange kind of color scheme. So we have this orange tree and this red tree over here. And then we could look over to the vegetation and maybe use some shrubs later. What else is there to pick? Oh, there's the red ones. And from here on out, you can pretty much look around whatever you need and just pick something out. I will just place some stuff now in the scenery, and explain afterward my thought process, and then we'll start placing them. Right, I think I have now all I need. And I was thinking about a little campsite, having those tents placed up, maybe a little bit of straw piles where the adventurers can sleep. A well, a bonfire, some torches, some vegetation, logs to sit on. And this is basically where we start building our camp around. Let's delete this. Before we start assembling, there's a couple of things I want to show you that can elevate your builds, which would be decorations. So if we have this stone well, for example, but we don't want anyone to enter this well and want to close it, there's a couple of things we can do. One would be just to place an object right on top of it, but there's a more effective way how you can manipulate models or how you can enhance them, which is called decorations. And what this lets you do is add models to them. So in this case, we could just add a decoration which always starts as an empty object. And we can go and select a model. And then over here we find the wooden floor hedge. And what we can do is just pull it up, maybe turn it around 180 degrees, make it a little bit smaller. And now if we look at the well, it is fully closed. And now what we have is the stone well as a complete new entity. And if we move it around, it always stays closed. So the next thing that I want to do before I actually start assembling is, since we're doing a night build, we will need some lights. And the bonfire without fire wouldn't be really cool. So let's go to the bonfire. And since there isn't a preset status that actually displays fire for the bonfire, we will have to add it via VFX effect. To make sure it's burning the entire time and not just once and then stop, we'll have to change this to a looping effect. As you can see, it is quite small. So now this looks like a proper bonfire. And now we will do the same with the torch. And what we also could do to give it like just a little bit of extra, we could add some particle effect to just make it look a little bit nicer. And what you can do is, if you have multiple VFX assets, you can just preview both of them at the same time. Before we continue, I just want to demonstrate you, there's just one issue with the fire. By default, it does not emit any light. So let's go back to the bonfire, add a new component, and this time we will add a light source. We have two different types. One is the point light, and the other one would be a spotlight. But since we're not making a studio light, the point light will do just fine. For fire, I like the orange one, so let's increase the radius a little bit, since it's a big fire. And you should make sure that the effective range is big enough so that you do not see how the light turns off. Because what the effective range does is it will only display the light source as long as the character is inside that effective range. And then we can do the same for the torches. So, and now in the test you can see that it actually does emit light. And with that being done, now we can start to actually build our stage. So what we're gonna do now is we just move everything a little bit away. And then we can just grab our assets one by one, however we need them. Since building a stage that takes a little bit of time, I will not make you sit through the entire process in real time. I will just speed up the footage now. Alright, I will stop building at this point. For now, this will suffice. And for this video's challenge, I want you to challenge yourself and maybe build your own starting area or safe area. It doesn't have to be the same. If you want, I also uploaded this whole scene now to the Miliastra Wonderland Resource Center so that all the prefabs and all the nodes are always updated and you can always check out on the newest version. And if you need anything to compare, then you can always use this project and import it into a new save file just to see how things are set up and maybe use it as a reference point. But I would highly recommend for you to build your own scene and use it as a learning experience. Also, one thing I didn't do was adding a background music, and maybe you can take this one as a challenge to find the option where the background music is selected, and then you just select the background music and let it play. Otherwise, for the next video, we'll be looking at more game mechanics, specifically how to move objects and how to use disruptor devices so that we can actually start building mechanics on maybe moving platforms, how to open a gate and then make it open up, and other fun things. So with this being said, I hope you liked the introductory of how to set up your scenery. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.